I'm Sarah. I'm 37. And at my nephew's birthday party on the family ranch in Boise, my mother cut the cake, handed a slice to every child, then halted directly in front of my 9-year-old daughter and declared, "She doesn't belong here." The room didn't freeze, it just died. Eyes went wide, voices choked off, and a cold silence swallowed everything. I took my daughter's hand, walked out of that house, and didn't look back. Not once. Before I tell you what happened next, how it all fell apart, and how, in the end, it handed me back my own life, do me one favor. Drop your city in the comments. I need to know I'm not the only one. This story starts a few weeks earlier. My phone buzzed, sharp in the quiet of my Boise office. I was finishing sketches for a downtown loft renovation, sunlight cutting a hard line across my drafting desk. The screen flashed, "Mom." My stomach did its old, familiar clutch. I let it ring twice. "Sarah." My mother Danielle's voice was soft, layered with that permanent, polished frost. "Reed is turning 10. The family will be at the ranch for his birthday. It's been too long." I leaned back, the pencil still in my grip. The ranch. Wide fields, the old barn, a museum of memories I'd spent years avoiding. Danielle only called when she needed an audience or a prop. Family gatherings were her theater, and there were always unwritten scripts. My brother, Colin Ingram, would be there, her undisputed star, the golden boy who could commit no sin in the gospel according to Danielle. My whole life had been measured against his. Colin closed his first deal at 15, she'd say, her eyes skating over my architectural plans. "And what are you building, Sarah? What will last?" My husband had been my sanctuary from all of it. We met in college, built a life young, and when Finley was born, he made a promise. Our girl would grow up free from that grinding pressure of constant comparison. But 6 years ago, a truck ran a red light on the highway out of town. One minute he was bringing home groceries, the next I was picking out a casket. At the funeral, Danielle found me, pulled me aside, and whispered the words that finally broke the last thread. "You know, Finley doesn't carry our real blood. Be careful how you raise her." I walked away that day and never truly went back. After that, it was just the brittle politeness of holiday cards. But Finley had started to see the empty space where a grandmother should be. At school pickup, she'd watch other kids tumble into grandparent hugs and ask, "Are ours just too far away, Mom?" Her questions were little knives. So when Danielle called, a weak, hopeful part of me wondered, could she have changed? Is this a door, however cracked? "Okay," I said into the phone, the word out before my logic could catch it. "Will come." Satisfaction, smooth and instant, colored her reply. "Wonderful. The rooms are ready." I hung up and stared at the clean lines of my sketch. They blurred under a wave of old dread. Returning to that ranch felt like walking back onto a battlefield where I'd already been defeated. But for Finley, for the chance to give her that feeling of belonging, I decided I could stomach the barbs. That evening, I collected her from art club. She bounced into the car, backpack swinging, a smudge of cerulean blue on her cheek. Over her favorite mac and cheese, I kept my voice light. "Guess who called today? Grandma Danielle." Her spoon halted midair. "Really?" A spark of pure hope lit her eyes. "She invited us to the ranch for Reed's birthday. Everyone will be there." Finley dropped her spoon and clapped, a burst of joy that echoed in our kitchen. A real family party. The questions poured out. Could we feed the horses? Make us mores? Did Grandma have baby calves? Her excitement was a tangible force, pushing my doubts into a corner. I ruffled her hair. "All of that and more, kiddo." She chattered through her bath, planning outfits, wondering if her cousin Daisy would share toys. At bedtime, she hugged her worn stuffed horse and whispered into its fur, "It's going to be the best." "Thank you, Mommy." Later, in the dark, I replayed Danielle's flawless invitation. I knew her patterns. But Finley's radiant hope made the risk feel necessary. I had built a good life here, a solid career, my own clients, a cozy apartment, friends like Sam who knew my history. It was just one weekend. I could be a shield. The next morning, Finley was up early, sketching the ranch barn on her tablet. "For Uncle Colin," she explained. I watched her at a red roof, tiny windows, her face tight with concentration. My heart swelled with pride and shriveled with dread simultaneously. She was trying so hard. I texted Sam about the trip. His reply was immediate: "You're braver than me. Call for evac if needed." I smiled, tucked my phone away, and faced the day. The birthday loomed, but for Finley, I told myself I could handle it. The next day, Finley claimed the kitchen table, a hurricane of craft supplies in her wake. She'd begged to start Reed's birthday card early. Out came the colored cardstock, the markers, a packet of horse stickers. Her small hands worked with solemn focus, folding and cutting until the paper sprang to life, a 3D pop-up stage. "First, the cake," she murmured, her tongue peeking out in concentration as she drew 3 tiers with looping pink frosting swirls. Next came the ranch gate, then tiny horses galloping in a circle. She glued a microscopic cowboy head onto one with the precision of a surgeon. I sat nearby with my laptop, a pretense of checking email. I was really just watching her. This card wasn't just a gift, it was an offering, a piece of her heart made tangible. She added a final touch, a speech bubble over the cake that read, "Happy double digits, cuz." And then looked up, her eyes luminous with hope. "Do you think he'll like it, Mommy?" I nodded, a sudden tightness in my throat making words difficult. "He'll love it." Later, when she'd fallen asleep on the couch, her hands still faintly smelling of glue, I called Sam. He answered on the second ring, the hiss of a coffee machine loud behind him. "Tell me you came to your senses about the ranch," he said, skipping any hello. I sighed. "Is it that obvious a trap?" "Yes." Sam knew the entire history, Danielle's lifelong favoritism, the funeral whisper, Colin's permanent residence on a pedestal. "It's a barbed wire trap in a pretty field," he clarified. "If you're walking into it, keep your guard up. And watch Finley closely." I thanked him and hung up. His warning settled in my gut like something heavy and cold. That evening, a nagging curiosity led me to an old email chain from the elementary school's parent-teacher association. I was still vaguely on the list, a legacy from when Finley first enrolled at the same school Reed and Daisy attended. Scrolling through minutes, I saw it, Danielle's name listed as both president and treasurer. One attachment, a budget report from last quarter, snagged my attention. I opened the PDF. Line items for field trips, art supplies. Then I saw it, miscellaneous, reimbursements, $3,000. The account number listed had the same last 4 digits as my mother's personal checking account, numbers I hadn't seen in years but recognized instantly. Another line, 2 weeks later, another $3,000 to the same account. My pulse kicked up a notch. This wasn't just odd, it was off. All of it. I forwarded the file to myself and slammed the laptop shut just as Finley stirred. This was adult chaos. She didn't belong anywhere near it. I pivoted to packing, trying to bury the unease under routine. The next morning at breakfast, we turned preparation into a game. "When we get there," I said, "you'll meet Grandpa Norman. He's married to Grandma Danielle and tells the best stories about the old barn." "Grandpa Norman," Finley repeated dutifully. "Then Uncle Colin, that's my brother, and Aunt Spring, his wife. Reed is turning 10, and Daisy is 7. They're your cousins." "Cousins," Finley giggled, rolling the word around in her mouth like a new candy. She insisted on practicing in the hallway mirror. "Hello, Grandma Danielle. Thank you for inviting us," she said with a formal little curtsy. Then, switching to a breezier tone, "Hi, Aunt Spring. I like your dress." I softly corrected her when she mixed up Uncle and Grandpa, but her enthusiasm was a force of nature. By lunch, she had the roster memorized and was already planning adventures. "I told Daisy we could build a fort in the barn," she announced. I packed our bags, Finley's favorite jeans, the sparkly sneakers she refused to compromise on. Into my own suitcase, I slid a manila folder of work documents, a shield against last-minute client crises. The budget email sat untouched in my inbox, a silent, pulsing alarm I chose to ignore for now. Sam's next text was a lifeline: "Drink water. Remember, you control the exit time." I sent back a thumbs-up emoji and turned my attention back to Finley. She was putting the final touches on the pop-up card, painstakingly applying a glitter border around the horses. She held it up to the window, where the afternoon light caught the sparkles. "It's almost perfect," she declared, her voice full of a quiet pride that made my heart ache. The following day, we claimed the kitchen as our own. Finley was determined to bake a surprise for Reed, cowboy boot-shaped cookies. Flour misted the air and settled on every surface like fine snow as she painstakingly leveled each cup of chocolate chips. "Grandpa Norman will eat 3, she predicted, her voice serious with culinary forecasting. "And Uncle Colin likes the edges extra crispy." Her imagined dialogues with a welcoming family filled the warm kitchen, and for a few hours, the tight knot of dread in my chest loosened its grip. By evening, the masterpiece card stood sentinel on her dresser. Finley fell asleep with a small toy horse clenched in her fist, whispering about open fields and galloping. I lingered in her doorway, watching the steady rise and fall of her breathing. The damning emails still sat in their digital vault, but her innocent joy was a weight on the other side of the scale. I resolved to move forward one cautious step at a time. Saturday morning arrived, and our car crunched onto the gravel drive of the ranch. Finley plastered herself against the passenger window, her finger tracing the outline of the red barn and the endless white fences that stitched together the green fields. I parked near the stable. A few equine faces peered out with idle curiosity. The air carried the wholesome scent of dried hay undercut by the distant, smoky perfume of barbecue. Finley clutched her pop-up card to her chest, a sacred artifact, as we pulled our bags from the trunk. Mom materialized on the porch, her arms extending for the kind of hug that is all protocol and no pressure. "You made it," she stated, her gaze performing a swift, auditing sweep over Finley before locking onto me. "You're parked in the usual spot." "Yes, all good." Dad offered a wave from his post at the grill, a spatula in one hand as he held court with neighbors already settled at long picnic tables under a canopy of string lights. Colin and Spring's pickup rumbled in right behind us. They began unloading coolers and grocery bags in a well-practiced routine. Reed exploded from the truck, immediately lost in a crowd of friends by a towering inflatable bounce house. Little Daisy followed in his wake, a plush horse tucked under her arm like a scepter. We moved toward the main feast table, dressed in its red checkered cloth and already heavy with bowls of potato salad and chips. My eyes automatically counted the place settings. There were exactly enough for the acknowledged adults and children. Not a single spare. A small tug on my sleeve. "Mom, where do I sit?" Mom's glance was swift, almost dismissive. "We can add a folding chair at the end." She vanished into the house and returned with a rust-flecked metal chair, positioning it at a slight angle, apart from the unified row. Finley climbed onto it, her knees jutting up, her chin barely clearing the tabletop. Undeterred, she extended her card toward Mom, her face bright with pride. "I made this for Reed." Mom took it, opened the cover for a brief second, her eyes skimming over the intricate pop-up scene. "That's nice. Keep trying," she murmured. Then she turned, walked into the mudroom, and placed the card on a cluttered shelf, burying it between a faded raincoat and a pair of muddy boots. Finley watched the door shut. I saw the tremor in her lower lip, quickly smothered by the determined smile she forced onto her face. The party's script unfolded. Children wove between hay bales and shrieking games. Adults sipped lemonade, their laughter forming a bland soundtrack. Mom curated a circle of guests around Daisy, who was performing pirouettes in a frilly lace dress. "Look at this little lady." "Pure grace and curls," Mom announced, her voice engineered to carry. Daisy soaked in the praise, glowing. Finley drifted toward the circle. In the shuffle, a cup tipped, an arc of crimson juice splashing across her white skirt. Mom's notice was instantaneous. "Careful now. Don't ruin good clothes in all this dust." Finley swiped at the stains with futile, frantic hands, her cheeks flushing a deep, mortified pink. At that moment, Colin strode over, his arm draping around Reed's shoulders. "Got some news, everyone," he boomed. "Reed just landed a full scholarship to the junior writing program downtown." A wave of applause rippled through the guests. Reed puffed out his chest, launching into a detailed account of his jumping form. Spring chimed in with tales of dawn patrols to the stables. I offered my congratulations, but Mom's voice effortlessly reclaimed the spotlight. That's my grandson. Always exceeding expectations. Finley, seeking solace, lined up with the other kids for a promised pony ride. The handler gave her a nod and was about to help her up when Mom's voice cut in again. Those boots are too new, not broken in. You'll stay in the petting zoo area, dear. Finley's shoulders slumped almost imperceptibly before she obeyed, retreating to stroke the placid goats and sheep, her eyes fixed on Reed as he commanded laps on a spotted pony. When lunch was called, a spread of hot dogs, buttery corn, and salads, Finley reached for a second handful of chips. Mom caught the motion and gave a small, corrective shake of her head. Easy on the snacks. You'll spoil your appetite for cake. Without a word, she then heaped an extra serving onto Daisy's already full plate. I busied myself handing out drinks, a meaningless task that let me keep my line of sight on Finley, marooned on her island of a chair. She was chatting with a neighbor's child about a school project, her voice animated, her smile a brave and fragile thing as she worked to ignore the tiny, precise cuts of the day. Dad found me by the corral, a temporary oasis from the party's current. Your mother's in her element when she's hosting, he said, his voice low. I just nodded, my throat too tight for words. Nearby, Colin was holding a masterclass in lasso tricks for the boys. Reed replicated each move with unnerving skill. Spring orchestrated a sack race, strategically pairing Daisy with the fastest kids. Finley joined in, a flash of hope on her face, but stumbled and fell into the grass almost immediately. Get up, it's fine, Mom called from her post, the words devoid of any real concern. As the afternoon sun began to bleed into gold, more families swelled the crowd. The yard became a noisy, bustling hive. I saw Finley retreat to the rabbit pen, offering carrot stubs through the wire. I refilled water coolers, my ears catching snippets of Mom's conversation as she detailed Colin's latest real estate triumph to a rapt neighbor. The air vibrated with forced merriment, laughter, overlapping chatter, tinny music from a speaker. Finley waved me over to the sheep pen. A woolly lamb was nuzzling her open palm. He's so soft, she whispered, as if sharing a secret. I knelt beside her, brushing the grass stains from her knees, a futile attempt to clean away the day's slights. Then, the main event, the cake. Tables were cleared with ceremonial efficiency. Mom emerged from the house bearing a massive rectangular cake, a fondant corral scene with a giant 10 candle at its center. The guests sang. Reed, glowing, blew out the sparkler. Finley stood on her toes, watching the last embers die. Plates were passed out. Mom took up the knife, cutting lavish slices and beginning the procession down the line of waiting children. That's when my phone screamed to life, a client from Salt Lake, panic in his text, emergency revisions on the lobby render. Now, I saw Finley, momentarily distracted by a game near the bounce house, and held up a finger. 1 minute. Mom gave an absent wave, her focus on the cake's distribution. I slipped into the quiet of the guest room, set my laptop on a dresser, and dove into the Zoom call. The connection wavered, then held. I shared my screen, my cursor moving lines and swapping materials as the client dictated changes. The meeting stretched, chewing through the minutes. Lighting, textures, sightlines. In every brief pause, I checked my phone. No messages. From behind the closed door, the party sounds continued, a distant roar of celebration, clattering plates, a spike of cheers for a game winner. Nearly 40 minutes later, the client finally signed off. I saved the files, shut the laptop, and stepped back into the evening, my eyes searching automatically for Finley at the dessert table. She wasn't there. I found her on the back porch steps, curled into a small, tight ball, her knees pressed to her chest, staring at nothing. No plate. No cake. I hurried over, the wood of the step creaking as I Saturday, hey, sweetheart. What happened? She looked up. Her eyes were raw and red. Everyone got cake but me. Her voice was a shattered thing. I wrapped an arm around her. Tell me everything, I whispered, my own blood going cold. She took a ragged breath. When you left, Grandma cut the cake. She gave a piece to read, then Daisy, then all the other kids. When she got to me, she just went to the next person. One of the other moms pointed at me and asked, "What about her?" Finley's chin quivered. Grandma looked right at me and said, loud so everyone could hear, "She's not part of this family. She doesn't belong at our celebration." A tear tracked through the dust on her cheek. All the kids stared. Then they just ate their cake. I came out here. A primal, scorching anger ignited in my core. I kept my voice level, a calm mask over a volcano. "You did absolutely nothing wrong. Stay right here. I'll get your cake." I stood, my vision sharpening. Mom was by the kitchen door, empty plate in hand, talking with Spring. Colin was loading presents into his truck bed. Dad was at the ice chest, doling out drinks. I marched to the dessert table. The ravaged cake sat under a fly cover. A kind-faced neighbor smiled. "Oh, go ahead, dear. Plenty left." I took a plate, cut a thick corner piece heavy with frosting, and sprinkled it with the rainbow jimmies Finley loved. On my return path, I passed the open kitchen window. Mom's voice sliced through the screen, crystal clear. I said what needed to be said. "She doesn't belong here, pretending she's part of the celebration." Spring's murmur was inaudible. Mom again, her tone final, "This day is for real family accomplishments." My fingers clenched around the paper plate, threatening to crumple it. I set it down on a side table. With a chilling clarity, I pulled out my phone, opened the recording app, and pressed the red button. Moving silently closer to the screen door, just out of sight, I held the phone steady. I captured her voice, poisonously precise. "She doesn't belong at this family party. Period." I stopped the recording after 20 seconds, saved the file, and slipped the phone back into my pocket. My heart was a war drum in my chest as I retrieved the cake and returned to my daughter. She managed a faint, wobbly smile when I handed her the slice. "Chocolate," I said softly. "With the little horses. Your favorite." She ate slowly, deliberately, while I sat beside her, a human wall against the party. Kids streaked past, chasing balloons, blind to our little island of hurt. Dad ambled over with 2 juice boxes. "Everything okay?" he asked, handing one to Finley. She nodded, still chewing. "Just a work crisis," I said, my voice smooth steel. He paused, then nodded back and returned to the grill. Finley ate only half. "I don't want any more, Mom," she said quietly. I brushed the crumbs from her lap. "I am so proud of you for telling me the truth," I said. She leaned her full weight against me, exhausted and hollow. The exodus began. Cars kicked up gravel as they departed. Mom took her position on the porch, the picture of gracious hospitality, smiling and waving as each set of taillights disappeared. I collected our bags, folding Finley's jacket over my arm with methodical care. The recorded words played on a loop in my mind, no longer just an insult, but evidence. Fuel. Finley stood, not needing to be told it was time. We walked to the car in heavy silence, 2 shadows leaving a field of staged light. That night, after Finley was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table, the glow of my laptop the only light. The drive home had been a silent movie. Finley's had a soft weight against the window, her breathing even. I replayed the video, the sound off. My mother's lips moved with cruel precision, each word a silent bullet. Sending it felt like declaring a war there was no coming back from, but not sending it felt like betrayal of Finley and of myself. I attached the file to an email from my lawyer, Michelle Grandjean. We'd navigated tough contract disputes before. I trusted her nerve and her discretion. The subject was urgent family matter. Evidence. The message was 3 lines. Need counsel on next steps. This is connected to suspected misuse of school PTA funds. Her reply was immediate, on it. Send everything. I dove back into my email archive, found the old PTA threads, and forwarded the budget report I'd flagged. The numbers glared from the screen. 3 transfers, $5,000 each, all labeled reimbursement. A ghost trail leading to an account whose last 4 digits were etched in my memory from a lifetime of seeing my mother's checks. $15,000, floating in a ledger with no receipts to anchor it. Just past midnight, Michelle called. The video is a textbook case of intentional infliction of emotional distress, she began, her tone clinical. But the financial records? That changes the game. I pulled the public filings. Those transfers were deposited directly into an account under Danielle's name. There is zero documentation in the PTA minutes to justify them. She let the silence stretch. This looks like embezzlement, Sarah. It's not a family spat, it's a crime. I braced myself against the kitchen counter. How do we handle this without putting Finley on a witness stand? Michelle laid out a cold, clean strategy, an anonymous report to the school board, a quiet tip to the district's financial officer, or a strategic release of information to force a resignation and restitution. Their annual fundraising gala is next Saturday at the community center. Danielle is the keynote speaker, talking about community trust. The irony is perfect. If we time it right, the fallout is contained to the adults, and the board will be forced to act immediately to avoid a public scandal. We had a plan. Michelle would assemble a dossier, the edited video, time-stamped and with other children's faces blurred, alongside the financial audit trail and relevant sections of the PDA bylaws. I'll scrub any mention of Finley, she assured me. This will be about the money and the breach of fiduciary duty. Period. I thanked her and hung up, then spent hours staring at the dark ceiling. Sleep was a series of jarring snapshots, a crumbling fondant horse, a column of identical numbers, my daughter's confused eyes. Morning brought the automatic rhythm of normalcy, school drop-off, client emails, coffee strong enough to scour the lingering fog from my mind. Finley chattered about her class project. We're making a whole herd of paper horses, she announced. I smiled, the expression a careful mask. Sam's text blinked through, heard the exit was early. You okay? I gave him a pared-down version later. His reply was succinct, good. Michelle's a shark. Over the week, Michelle's updates arrived via an encrypted channel. She had obtained bank statements through legal channels. The deposits into my mother's personal account were a perfect match, the same amounts, the same dates. The memos were a farce: AV equipment rental, guest honorarium, field trip emergency fund. There were no corresponding invoices, no contracts. Michelle sent the scanned documents, each page stamped confidential. I reviewed them on my lunch break at a cafe, printing copies that felt hot to the touch. The pattern was undeniable. A $5,000 transfer would appear days before a notation for a spa weekend or a cruise booking. It was theft, plain and tidy. Michelle's final note on it read, "The board will move swiftly to contain this. They'll want it buried, not litigated." One evening, over math homework, Finley studied my face. Mom, are you still sad about the party? I closed the folder of financial records. I'm not sad. I'm making sure things are fair. She accepted this with a nod and returned to her fractions, the answer apparently sufficient. By Friday, Michelle was ready. Dossier is final. Video is clean. Financials are irrefutable. How do you want to deliver? We decided on a surgical strike. A mass email to the entire PDA distribution list, sent at the peak of my mother's speech at the gala. We'd use a disposable account and public Wi-Fi from the library downtown. A ghost in the machine. Maximum impact, minimal traceability. I agreed. The gala loomed a night of silent auctions and self-congratulation, with my mother as its shining pillar. Michelle sent the final package, a single PDF. Inside it, the video and the documents were woven into a damning narrative. Ready. Signal for launch. I saved it to a nondescript flash drive labeled Floral Concepts. The following days were a blur of client work, but beneath the surface, a single purpose hummed with steady voltage. Finley practiced lines for her school play, grinning at her reflection, blissfully unaware of the reckoning taking shape. Sam offered to be my backup at the event. I declined. This was a solo mission. On Thursday, Michelle's final confirmation arrived. One click. 200 inboxes. The clock starts then. Alone in my office after hours, I nodded. Waiting for the perfect moment wasn't just strategy, it was poetry. Consequences, I believed, should arrive with impeccable timing, landing only on those who had built the stage for them. Saturday night, The community center glowed under the strange cheer of the annual fundraising gala. Tables draped in burgundy cloths displayed silent auction items, overpriced gift baskets, serene landscapes by local artists, certificates for weekend escapes. Families orbited the room, a low hum of small talk underpinned by the squeals of children chasing escaped balloons. I arrived early, camouflaging myself among the volunteers arranging chairs. Finley was safe at home with Sam, deeply engrossed in a 1,000-piece puzzle, a world away from the theater about to unfold. Michelle's digital trap was set. The email, loaded into a temporary account, awaited a single command from the public Wi-Fi network. At 7 o'clock precisely, my mother took the stage. The spotlight loved her. Microphone in hand, a smile of polished benevolence fixed in place, she began. Family, she intoned, the word rich and warm in the speakers, is the very foundation upon which we build our community. Tonight embodies that spirit, our shared commitment to supporting every child. Polite applause rippled through the room. She spoke of PTA initiatives, thanked corporate sponsors, painted a vivid picture of a new, inclusive playground. It was a masterclass in performative unity. From a shadowed corner near the emergency exit, partially hidden by a tower of event programs, I opened my laptop. The draft was there. Subject: Urgent. PTA Fiscal and Ethical Transparency Report. Attachments: the edited video file and the compiled financial dossier. The recipient list was a scroll of 200 email addresses belonging to every parent, teacher, and administrator with a stake in the school. My cursor hovered over the send button. My own blood roared in my ears, a drumbeat of finality. Mom concluded, raising her chin. Together, let's make this a year our children will never forget. My finger tapped the trackpad. Click. The deed was done. A digital phantom, carrying the truth, flew into 200 private boxes. It began subtly. A phone screen illuminated on a dinner table. Then another. A man nearby frowned, tilting his screen for his wife to see. A low, gathering murmur, like the first rumble of an avalanche, replaced the casual chatter. Mom descended from the stage into a sea of suddenly averted eyes and frozen smiles. Across the room, someone played the video on a tablet, the tinny, unmistakable sound of her own voice. She doesn't belong at this family party. Period. Hissed into the open. Sharp intakes of breath punctuated the air as others swiped to the financial ledgers, the damning transfers laid bare. By 8 o'clock, the school principal, her face a grim mask, entered the hall. She moved directly to my mother, spoke low and firm into her ear, and guided her, arm not quite taken, toward a side exit. A knot of board members convened urgently, their heads bent over printed folders. I didn't wait for the curtain call. I closed my laptop, melted into the stream of early leavers, and vanished into the cool night. Sunday morning, my phone vibrated with a call from my father. I let it ring out. His voicemail was a monument to exhausted defeat. Sarah, the board convened an emergency session last night. Your mother has been removed from all PTA positions. She is required to repay the full $15,000 by Friday. She'll need a loan. A long pause, the sound of a shaken breath. This is devastating. But she orchestrated it. Call me, please. I texted a brief, neutral reply. For now, it's best we communicate in writing. By lunchtime, a message from Spring appeared. I've blocked Danielle's number. I won't have the kids exposed to this toxicity. Colin's silence was its own loud statement. Monday, the world of drywall samples and client meetings went on, blissfully oblivious. In my professional inbox, among the routine correspondence, was the finalized offer for the boutique hotel expansion in Boise. After 2 months of negotiations, the contract was mine, the most significant project of my career, granting me complete creative authority. I signed it with a steady hand. Finley and I celebrated with a simple dinner, her favorite pasta, ice cream drenched in syrup. As she cleared her bowl, she hopped down and returned with her backpack. Pinned to the front was a handmade button constructed from cardboard and markers. In bold, proud letters it proclaimed, "I belong." A herd of tiny, carefully drawn horses ran along the border. "For my backpack," she said, her chin lifted. "So it's clear." I pulled her into an embrace, my face buried in her hair, feeling a fracture inside me finally knit itself together, stronger than before. We established a new boundary, wide and serene, and named it peace. No more hollow holiday cards. No more coercive invitations. My mother's social empire contracted into a territory of whispers and sidelong glances. The calculus of it all was brutally simple. Favoritism is a toxin that eventually contaminates the soil it grows in, and stolen trust always demands total repayment. Thank you for reading this to the end. Tell me what you would have done, where you're reading from. Let's see how far the truth can travel.